Alright, hey everyone, I'm NerdCube, uh, and a new Terra Mystica map just dropped today. I'm pretty excited about it, so just want to make a quick video introducing you all to it, reviewing it, letting you know my initial thoughts and what I expect to be the strengths and weaknesses of it. It's been a pretty exciting, recent couple years for Terra Mystica. We've had Terra Nova drop, the Fan Factions expansion, so just excited to see that people are still designing new maps that are making it out into the world. This map was designed by the father-in-law of Ghostly One, who's a Terra Mystica player a lot of you might know. Not sure his father-in-law's background with Terra Mystica, but obviously has a good eye for map design. I think at first glance you can see it's just pretty interesting. Really taking a very symmetrical approach to map design here. I think obviously a lot of other maps try to have different, corners, pockets of the map, east, west, north, south, that like behave differently. This one's kind of uniform all the way through, and I think that's a really interesting take that we haven't seen before. I think the other notable thing here is, of course, they took a lot of design inspiration from Fjords in trying to play to the strengths of the weaker factions and trying to tone down the strengths of the better factions. So you can see Fakirs get some easy yellow hexes for jumping, same with Dwarves, but a faction like Cultists, for example, one of the stronger factions of the game, they didn't give them starting hexes. And that's a pretty bold choice, but I think that's the kind of thing that we need to tone down a faction like Cultists. And so we'll see how that plays out, but I like where they were going with the, it's clear that like the designer of this map has played a lot of Terra Mystica and understands, the kind of the meta and which factions need to be balanced. I think, some other initial reactions, obviously just Giant Stronghold and Nomad Stronghold look really good on this map. We'll see that play out in my tier list, but I think, clearly designed around those as well. And we get a few more, like one dig for 2 hexes. For like blue and green, and for red and gray. There's a couple more of those spots than there are on a normal map, and I think that's really interesting. I think that will make color combos very contentious, like in turn order picking. If red or gray is picked before the other, I think that makes the other one a lot weaker because then you don't get that one dig for 2 hexes. So yeah, pretty interesting here. I'm very intrigued by the design. So to just briefly jump into the tier list, these are kind of my initial gut reactions, still formulating them, but in my S tier, I've got Dwarves and Swarmlings. Reason for this being, so I think, let's talk about Dwarves first. Like I mentioned, Dwarves have this jumping going on where they'll be able to really easily do a lot of jumps. And I think the thing that's especially important for them is that they will be able to jump and connect a lot easier than other factions, right? They will be able to, other factions might have a more difficult time connecting, but they've got like specifically these green hexes make it pretty nice for them to go jump and connect to other parts of the map. So I really like that there. I also, we'll get into this a little bit later, but I kind of expect blue and yellow to be 2 of the strong colors also, and gray sitting in between them just, I think, means that they're going to get a lot of leech. So that's really good. And then obviously I like this like 1 dig for 2 hexes that they've got, even not talking about all the jumps. So I think Dwarves are really strongly positioned on this map. Get a lot of leech, have really good expansion. And then Swarmlings, like I mentioned, I kind of think connection could be an issue. Like expansion and connection could be an issue for some factions. And Swarmlings just don't have to care about that too much. I think they can play their tall Swarmlings game. Obviously, like the early expansion is great for them when there's no green in. And I think this is probably going to be a little bit lower scoring of a map than usual. And so I think Swarmlings just being able to kind of go play off in the corner, not worry about fighting for territory or connecting is really valuable. Those are my 2 S tiers. A tier, Darklings, Nomads, Witches. Those are kind of the usual suspects of this kind of tier, I think. Darklings are a little tricky because they don't have any 1 dig for 2 hexes, but I think they're going to be in the middle of a lot of leech, and I think they'll just be able to like open Sanctuary pretty often and dig their way out. And once they dig their way out of a black hex, there's often, they get 2 digs for 2 hexes, and then, you know, so I think they'll be fine there, and I think their inherent scoring and their natural strength is just too much. Nomads, it's mainly just the strength of their stronghold. I think stronghold opening is going to be pretty automatic here. Not just doing these 1 dig for 2 hexes, but I think they're going to be able to compete on network a lot more easily. Like similar to dwarves, the fact that they can kind of cut through the map through these like vertical columns more easily than other factions. Really gives them a big edge. And then witches. Witches could be S tier, honestly. I debated that for a little while. They've got the 1 dig for 2 hexes. And I think their stronghold is also going to be really valuable at getting them to other parts of the map. The reason I bumped them down a little bit is just partly because of swarmlings. Like, I think we might be seeing swarmlings in every game. And so I think that's the kind of, you know, it takes down their power level a little bit because swarmling can box them in more, you know, taking away one of their early 1 dig for 2 hexes. So, yeah, that's my A tier. In the B tier, we've got fakirs. I know this might be a little controversial. I saw some of the initial reactions from the community where that fakirs might be OP on this map, but I'm a little less sold. I think obviously their ability to do jumps is great, and they do have some nice like ways to connect, you know, to another chain of jumps. But you'll notice it's just less yellow hexes on this map. You know, it's just so that's like a little bit of a bummer there. And I think the fact that they don't have 1 dig for 2 hexes anywhere, you know, makes a lot of other factions stronger. They've got to do 2 digs for their 2 hexes. So it just makes them inherently weaker than these like green and blue factions that do have a nice spot. Fakirs don't even have a spot where they can dig once from a starting location. So until they get that priest production up, it's going to be really tricky, I think, for them to get their economy going. Double temple opening is probably going to be mandatory. Giants, I think they're solid here. I think the whole, you know, 1 dig for 2 hexes, and they can go either way around depending on like what color neighbor they've got in the game. Really good. 2 downsides for them is just like not being able to ship to some natural red hexes is a bit of a bummer. And I think just the fact that dwarves are so good is also going to box them in. You know, there's always going to be this threat that you start next to dwarves, and dwarves just like tunnel and box you in a little bit before you can really get started. Cultists, I mean, they don't have a starting hex, but they're cultists. Like they can't be lower than B tier, so not much to say there. I think, you know, their starting economy, their cult scoring is going to carry them. Mermaids. This one's a little interesting. At first glance, I was kind of thinking that mermaids might be really bad. Well, I was torn because on the one hand, mermaids can't take advantage of their natural ability of shipping, but they do have these like 1 dig for 2 hexes, so that feels kind of good. But the thing that like ended up making me a little more optimistic and putting them into B tier instead of C tier, I think, was the shipping bonus tile. I think when that's in the game, it's really going to be good for them because it's unlikely anyone else is going for shipping early, or maybe even at all, and that just like gives mermaids a lot freer access to that tile, and I think they could play a bit of a taller, like shipping oriented game. So I think we'll see like a pretty unique take on mermaids play on this map, which I'm interested in, but not super confident about this, and I could see them bouncing up or down. Then engineers here, this was also a difficult one to rank. On the one hand, they do have these like 1 dig for 2 hexes. On the other hand, like, what do they really have other than that? They're not going to be able to ship and like access easy grays, so I'm not super confident in engineers here, but I just think they're going to have a lot harder time than dwarves. But they're engineers, so it's hard to like put them too low down. Not super confident on that one. Orin and Chaos Magicians, not a lot to say here. I think they're just Orin are just weaker than witches, so we just bumped them down a couple tiers. Chaos Magicians, I think, like most maps, are going to be a little bit glass cannon-y. If there's no gray in the game, I think they're going to be really good. They'll have some really nice expansion opportunities. And if gray's in the game, it's probably going to be really tough, especially if it's dwarves. Don't pick Chaos Magicians in like a turn order game after dwarves, because I think there's just a real chance that you just get completely boxed in on their first move. And then down here in F tier, we've got Alchemists. I just think they're you know, this is always the eternal struggle of like, how do you nerf Darklings a little bit without hurting Alchemists? I think that's one of the biggest flaws of this map, is they didn't do a great job of that. Alchemists are just going to really struggle without places to ship. And then Halflings, you know, unlike cultists, they're really dependent on like getting their early worker economy going via dwellings on the board, and so I think not having starting hexes is really going to cripple them a bit there. So yeah, that's kind of my initial take on this map. I'm pretty excited to play. I expect some leagues will start springing up, you know, to play on this map. So yeah, hope to see y'all there, and let me know in the comments what y'all think. See ya.